Frequency manipulation is one of the most important tools we have when we're mixing. You can change the entire emotion of a song based on what you decide to push on any given elements, what you decide to feature, what you decide to boost compared to cut. Now, specifically, there are frequencies that elicit emotions. Now, Manny Marroquin talks about some great stuff about frequency manipulation that I had to talk about because there's no question that this is how I was able to get a handle on what I was doing. You have to sort of learn how to identify what frequencies are where. You can start this on a very broad scale, like the high end, the mid-range, and the low end. Just those three is where you start mentally. When you figure out what things sound like at like 100 hertz, what it sounds like at like 1K, what it sounds like at like 8K and up. Those basic things right there, if you just internalize those, what that means, what you'll find is when you hear a source and you want to bring something out of it, you'll know what it's either missing to you, or what you want to add to it, what's not there, what you want more of, and it'll just fall into those three categories. That's why you could do a lot of great mixes with 3-band EQs. Like, that's it. You just need 3 bands. And I'm not saying this works for everything. My preference of EQ is the SSL style, which is 4 bands. But my point is, 3-band EQs, like the Neve 1073, you could do so much with. And that's because if you think of things in that way, the high end, the mid-range, and the low end, and just things like 100 hertz, what it sounds like, 1K, and what 8K or 10K, like what that sounds like, right? Just those, that's it. You'll be able to get so much out of your songs. Every time you're dealing with anything, especially even if it's like a beat track, if you have a beat track that you're working on, my goal when I'm mixing is always to take whatever sources I'm dealing with and first make them fit together within the context of the song. Sometimes a beat track sounds great out the gate, so you don't have to do a ton. Like, I'm typically not compressing a beat track to make it do more than it's doing unless there was something wrong with one of the sounds. But usually when people use beat tracks, they're picking something that sounds good from the start. So there's probably a lot of virtual instruments. You don't have to do a ton of compression, but you might want to use compression to change how early or late it feels by manipulating the release time a bit. You know, you may want to do that, but you wouldn't need to like control level of it most likely because it's already a pristinely recorded sound. But I do use EQ on like every single mix. Doesn't matter if I have the beat track or not, because I need to make the vocals and whatever's going on with the vocal arrangement work with this beat track in a way that it was like designed together, even though the beat track was created totally by itself and the rest of the stuff was created totally by itself. You'll have to do this even if you're not working on beat track stuff also. But all I'm saying is, if you have to do it in that situation, you clearly have to do it in all situations. So it doesn't matter what your kind of work you're working on, even if it's a beat track. I'm usually manipulating EQ to some extent to be able to fit the vocals into it, for example, because if you got a lot of stuff living where you want the vocals to live, it ain't gonna work. So you're gonna have to make room for things, and the way I like to do it is not visually by picking out frequencies. I like to just hear it and do it. That's actually why the UC1 is one of my favorite things that I bought in a long time, and it's not a paid ad. It's never a paid ad with me, but the goal for me is not to look at what I'm doing. So that's the beauty of something like that. It's the SSL controller that allows you to just, if you know where the stuff is, eventually your hands just go there. So I want more high end, my hand's just there and I'm moving it. And I'm never looking at the numbers. I'm never looking at like what frequency it's at, because I don't really care. I'm all about listening to it. And once I got this, I was able to move through songs much faster rather than use the mouse to click through everything. But now, like I mentioned before, I'm actually working on getting good at mixing in the box, and I'm all about using the freaking laptop mouse and everything, and makes everything take much longer. And I notice from the contrast is huge when it comes to looking and needing to put the mouse on a dial and needing to pull the mouse in a certain direction to get it to do things. It's like so different than just putting your hand where you need it to go and being able to do things so much quicker. It's like you're saving seconds every EQ move, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. It's a lot because your brain is thinking way faster than your hand is moving when you're doing the computer, and it's even thinking faster than your hand's moving when it's on the controller or a desk, like an SSL desk. It's the same thing. It's your brain's moving faster than your hand, but at least then it's a closer combination. It's not such a latency between the hand and the brain. It's closer. Trust me, it's way closer. So that's why that works. And anybody who likes mixing on a desk, that's why they like it, because they could just hear it and do it and not be looking at a frequency number and pulling a mouse in any direction. Like, that's the reason, okay? And I did that for years before I got this. I'm just saying this helps with the quickness. It definitely does. But moving past that, let me throw on Manny Marroquin real quick, because he's got this awesome thing to say about something he does at all his lectures. And it sort of echoes what I said. And it's kind of how I started. I started on a 4-track that was a mini disc 4-track that had 3-band EQ. Like, that was it. So I was able to really internalize this concept from the beginning. And I think it helped me a lot. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. This is fair use for teaching purposes. Fair use for teaching purposes. Here we go.
Well, and I've been thinking a lot about something you said the last time, which was that when you used to go to Guitar Center and mess around with the 4-track, but that you would say, okay, I'm going to mix this so it makes me happy. All right, now I'm going to mix it so it makes me angry.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like you can't tickle yourself, you know? Like, I mean, to really, to make yourself feel something while mixing, just using EQ on a 4-track, like, that's pretty badass.
Man. And you know, it's like, I remember like Dave Way back in the day, him and I would talk about emotions and frequencies and all that. And I remember going back to my high school teacher, like how he, you know, to this day, it blows my mind thinking of emotion based on frequencies, which is, you know, it's kind of obvious to a lot of people. But when you really go a lot deeper on how you make the same song have a completely different emotion based on levels and frequencies without touching anything else, without, you know, your stereo bus or getting complicated with processing or gain structure and any of that. I mean, the power that we have based on frequencies, how we can create an emotion, that's still really powerful. And now what we have to do is we have to be invisible, right? We don't have, you know, I love when people don't notice who mixed it or any of that. We have to be almost like, it's got to be what it's going to be. And our job is to kind of be invisible and hopefully create that emotion that the artist and producer are ultimately looking for.
And do you have, like, if you know you want to get a certain kind of emotion out of something, do you already have, like, something in your mind of what that EQ is going to look like? Or is it just, you know, you're going to get there with EQ and that's how you're going to do it?
I try to not look at frequencies, you know, like, especially in the world of like great looking GUIs and plugins, and you got to look for the frequency and stuff. And I'm kind of old school where if I'm mixing on a desk, if when I'm mixing on a desk, I just reach for the frequency and I don't even look at it. I
Right.
just go emotion, right? And I think that I try to do that with plugins as well. You know, when we do these seminars, panels and stuff, we all do them all the time. You know, one of the first things I always say is to give me a facial expression of what 1K means to you, right? And everyone has the same, they're all like, you know, and then I'm like, give me 100 hertz. They all kind of go down a little bit, you know, and then give me 10 kilohertz. And we're like, so, you know, that's an emotion. They're very basic emotions. But if you're telling me that 1K, you do this phase, then yeah. And if I want some aggression, I may go for that. And it's 3 simple frequencies that you can actually now divide, you know, multiply it by countless, possibilities. I think that's the very basic way to describe for someone that doesn't know what we do, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 Just a really interesting way of looking at it. You know,
Yeah.
it's different.
We apply it every single day without, you know,
without thinking about it.
So I just wanted to share that because to me, that says it all right there. If you were thinking, oh, I don't know what these frequencies mean, or if you're on that level, you need to start just taking any sort of basic 3-band EQ that comes free with your DAW and boost 1K on a vocal and listen to what that sounds like. then boost 10K. Bring the 1K back to as if you didn't boost it at all. Then boost 10K. See what that sounds like. Then boost 100 hertz. See what that sounds like. Trust me when I tell you, this basic 100, 1K, 10K, that concept, you need to internalize that. And it's a piece of cake. That's so broad on the spectrum. You have no shot at not hearing that. You'll hear it. And then once you get that, you can break it down a little further. What does, 400 hertz sound like? Split everything in the middle. What is, 5K? What is, so now you got 10K, 5K, 1K, 400 or 500, and 100, right? What does 50 hertz sound like? That's the point. Just sort of figure that out. Then you could break it down further. But this is you don't have to know what every frequency sounds like. You just need these basic broad ideas, because when you mix, that's all that really matters is the idea. You need to hear what you're going to do. Hear it, and then you do it. So by hearing, I need a little more low mids. You know what rough zone you're going to just by assessing in your head. That's what this needs. You find that rough zone and you're just sweeping around till it feels right based on whatever else is going on. There's so many variables and so many permutations that the idea is all that's important, and then you get there and then you figure it out exactly. So you don't need to even know what every frequency sounds like. You just need to know a bunch of them. You need to know 50, 100, 400, 1K. What is 2, 3K start? It starts to be that bitey sound. 5K is the fizz on the top of a distorted guitar kind of thing. It's the attack on a lot of different drums, like is up there. That really like skin sound, kind of 5K-ish. Like just mess around. 10K is the air. Like 8K on a vocal starts to give you that high-end brightness, and everything up gives you that. So it's like a shelf from 8K up is a very, just, get comfortable. So I don't want to just be spitting numbers and make it confusing, because it's not. It's really not. It's just get the basics down with that stuff. Then you'll realize what he's saying, where you could mix a song twice and do different things with just EQ, and save the two versions, print the two versions, and listen to the two versions from an emotional standpoint of what does it make me feel now. And you'll hear what he's talking about. You'll hear that sometimes it makes it, like, the darker it is, the more brooding or emotional sadness you'll experience, like a depth of heaviness. And then when you make it super bright, it's like this very bitey, attacky kind of sound. And if you make it somewhere, a lot of mid-range, it's good. That's what that is. Mid-range, like 3K to like 1K, 800, like that zone, when things are really pushed in that zone, it's sort of the way I look at it is everything's a seesaw. So if you're pushing a lot in that zone, you're probably not going to have a lot of low end in your song or a lot of top end, because it's always a balance. In other words, if you have a lot of mid-range, no matter what, the low end and the high end feel like they're not as loud. You have to get that balance to be like there's enough low end, that's perfect. Then the mid-range matches that, and then the high end matches what it should be in this whole thing. And most people go about it where like, we need a ton of low end in this thing. They put a ton of low end. Now everything else, this is why I say everything else feels smaller, because now the mid-range is no longer where it needs to be, because it all can't be the loudest thing. Just like every instrument in the mix can't be the loudest thing, every frequency in the mix can't be the loudest thing. The low end takes up a lot of space, and by having a lot of it, it makes it where everything else, the mid-range and top end, don't feel like enough. So that's the balance of it's got to be enough low end, but not too much that we take away from how much mid-range and high end there could be. It's got to be the right amount of low end, and then the right amount of mid-range. None of these frequencies can be too much, or you will lose the feeling in the others. And that's the point. It's this balancing. It's a seesaw. It's a give and take, which is kind of like everything in life. Nothing in life is just one way. It's all a compromise in some fashion. And that's exactly what audio is. You cannot look at it like, we need a ton of this, and I always give a ton of this. Every song's going to be different. You heard what he said about you want to be invisible. It's a better thing to have like no sound as a mixer, because if you have a sound, it means you're doing a specific set of things every time on every song. Whereas if you just can make things sound great based on what they are already, now you become invisible in a way as a mixer, and nobody knows who mixed what. And that's actually better, because that means you can work on multiple different genres. You'll never not have work. You'll be able to do everything. Whereas if you have a specific sound, that's only going to fit like one lane of thing. And that sound could get played out, or that sound could get tired or outdated. Whereas that's the thing with the sound. Whereas if you just let it do what it wants to do, and you just go in that direction, not the direction that you always go, things always work out better. Always. I mean, in terms of being a mixer, you'll have way more opportunities in that way. That's why, a guy like Serban can mix so many different genres and make them sound great. He could do anything. And that's because he has his own thing, his own style, but he doesn't force things down a lane. Well, I hope you dug the video. If you did, do me a favor, throw a comment in there, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Just remember, you guys got this. This is a piece of cake over enough time. You will get this. You got this. Take it easy.